Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever and whenever you are. And welcome to Take the Points,
a true OG underdog podcast.
OG, just me and Robbie tonight.
That's right. God knows
good.
what Steve's doing. Probably watching wrestling, doing roids. Who knows?
Oh, man. We love you, Steve.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
I am so jacked up right now because I think this is how you feel when football season's kicking off. It's how I feel right now in March. Like, we just had the selection Sunday today. Mm-hmm. All the conference championships just happened. There's been basketball all day, every day. We're looking at the start of the NCAA tournament, some insane days ahead. Plus, you got, like, we're not going to talk about this today, but you got NBA playoffs are looming. Yep. Like, it's the best time of the year for sports for me right now, so I am jacked up tonight. Got my hot chocolate, and I'm ready to talk hoops.
Man, pour a little bourbon in there, call it a day, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm a Bailey's guy. If I had some, it'd be in here, but I finished it already. Got it.
And Wilson, we got to start. Shout out to you. Prayers out to the knee. We know you got a lot going on. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed for you.
I appreciate it. Had an MRI done today, so I'm hopeful that I'll be able to be back giving my player perspective pretty soon.
Thank you.
But man, it sucked. Yeah, it was a tough moment, and it's been a tough week after having that happen. One of the most painful things I've ever experienced. Like, I knew immediately that I was just done, and I've seen a couple people go down in games since that. Like, Cooper Flagg went down the other night, and just like it's changed the way that I immediately feel for guys when they go down. Just because not from a basketball standpoint for me, but just from a life standpoint, it immediately was like, oh my gosh, I have to fly to this place for work on this day. I've got to, still like try to take care of my son. Like, we're going on vacation in a month. Like, the immediate things that jump to my brain of like, oh no, now this is going to get in the way of this and that. Times that by 1,000,000 for guys who are like going into the NCAA tournament, or like it's their career that's on the line with that. So I feel for them.
Yeah. Well, you got all of our listeners are praying and hoping for your speedy recovery. The good thing is your face is still good. You can still talk. So you got that part. The podcast will not suffer because of this injury.
Podcast will thrive. I'll be able to give it even more of my attention now.
I love it. Wilson is back, baby.
I'm back.
I'm back. Although you've always been back. But anyways.
I have missed a few lately, so I'm feeling like I'll be more present going forward.
We are glad to have you back.
Thanks, man. All right, you ready to talk some hoops?
I love it.
You ready to talk some Big Ten, some NCAA tournament seeding? How you feeling right now about the Big Ten tournament, finish of the Big Ten season, and then NCAA tournament? How are you feeling overall?
First I'm wearing the Red Hawks hat today. I got to get out of the way early. My Miami Red Hawks had an 18-point lead in the first half yesterday in the MAC tournament championship game, and then proceeded to, I believe, not score in the last 6 minutes and lose at the buzzer to Akron.
Dude, are you serious? Akron's a pretty good team too.
Yeah, it was brutal. Actually, it was brother versus brother coaching, which is kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
Half brothers. But yeah, it was kind of a cool story. But anyway, so yes, we'll start with the Big Ten. I know we'll start with the tournament. Unfortunately, my Red Hawks will not be dancing, but I had to call them out just because I'm a Red Hawk through and through. So
I appreciate that, though. That's like mad respect to that.
Yeah, right. And then of course I had to flip over last night so Miami game ends, we lose. I flip over to the Pistons game. Cade's getting tossed. Pistons come back. Then they end up losing. It was just like most like it was brutal.
Crap.
Like yes. I just was in one of those moments where it was like everything was wrong. It was like 11 o'clock at night. I was just like, damn it. Like, both my teams just lost. I hate everything.
Well, I felt the same way yesterday.
So that's how my Saturday night was. Yeah.
I mean, I feel you, because Michigan State lost yesterday to Wisconsin in a close game that they had been leading for most of the game. It was a tough game to lose. So and then that Pistons game. Although I will say the Pistons did almost come back and win. I had a lot of pride in the team, like Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris down the stretch, JB Bickerstaff just showing out for the guys, like putting them on his back, especially in his press conference, just having their backs. When he was talking about how terrible the officiating was and getting Cade tossed for nothing. So yeah, that was pretty brutal. But
yeah, that was a bummer.
Can I get something off my chest?
Please go ahead.
All right. So I want to first say congratulations to the Big Ten champions, Michigan State Spartans. We got a banner going up. We won Big Ten title, which is pretty cool. They had a crazy gauntlet coming down the end of the year. They won 8 games in a row, 7 games in a row against ranked teams, which is a crazy stretch. And then obviously they lost that one to Wisconsin on Saturday, which is a good team. And it was a tough loss, but I'm actually okay with that loss. But what I got to get, because it's going to prepare us better for the tournament, I think. But what I got to get off my chest is what I've been seeing this afternoon and this evening after Michigan won the Big Ten tournament, which, by the way, congratulations to them for that Big Ten tournament championship. Really nice 3-game stretch for them to win that tournament. But what's really been bothering me is all of the posts from U of M's Twitter account or X account, from the NCAA tournament official account, and from ESPN, supposed to be the worldwide leader in sports, okay? They have all tweeted, congrats to the Big Ten champion, Michigan Wolverines. That's not true. I went to the Big Ten's website because I was like, hold on a minute. How do they define Big Ten champions? And it is the Big Ten season, 20-game season champions, not the team that wins 3 games in a weekend to win a tournament. They call the Big Ten champions the winners of the Big Ten for the season, which is Michigan State. So it's been really, really just getting under my skin more than it probably should have, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Right. But Michigan, come on. You got to just give the other team their flowers for once when they win the Big Ten. We're hanging up a banner in our stadium that says Big Ten champions, because that's officially what we are. Don't call yourselves that. You're not that. I'm not surprised. It's exactly what I would expect from that program, to take credit for a thing that they didn't win. Because obviously, if you ask anybody, would you rather win the Big Ten season or the Big Ten tournament? You're going to take the Big Ten season. And the reason why, you see it in the seeding today. Michigan State's a 2, Michigan's a 5, because clearly one's more important than the other. But Michigan, you are not the Big Ten champions. You are the Big Ten tournament champions, so congrats to that. But clearly the committee doesn't really care about that, because you still got a 5 seed.
Okay, how we feeling? Take a sip of the cocoa. How we feeling after that? We feeling better?
I do feel better. Better. And I would encourage anybody who's listening who disagrees with that to go look it up yourself and to educate yourself. We're not new here to college basketball. We're not new to Big Ten basketball here. We know what a Big Ten championship is, and it's not winning 3 games in a tournament.
So Wilson, had they said we are Big Ten tournament champions, you have no problem. It is the mere illusion of saying that it is Big Ten champions.
Yes, Big Ten champions is a thing. Because I've been watching Big Ten basketball for 25 plus years, and I'm not kidding. When I was a 2nd, 3rd grader, I was a diehard Big Ten basketball fan watching Michigan State. It's ingrained in me that Big Ten champions is not the Big Ten tournament. And so, if Michigan wants to say they're the Big Ten tournament champions, of course they are. They won it. But that doesn't really matter that much. And everybody who knows basketball really knows that. I've seen a lot of people on X saying, yeah, but the Big Ten tournament championship is really the only one that matters. It matters a lot more than the Big Ten. Come on. You won 3 games. It's the reason that it doesn't matter is clearly stated in the fact that there's like 3 or 4 Big Ten teams who got seeded higher than you in the tournament that really matters, in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So clearly, Big Ten tournament, it's nice. Yeah. It's a nice to win, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, from outsider perspective, Wilson, no skin in the game. My Hawks lost. Seems like a little potato. Like, does it really matter? Like you said, the tournament was what matters. I get it. It's it's also Michigan. If this was Indiana doing this, I don't think you would care as much. I just don't. I think the fact that it's Michigan is a little extra poke.
But I will say, even if I saw, like, let's say Illinois won the Big Ten tournament championship and they were posting Big Ten champs, I would still be like, whoa. No, you are not. Only because Michigan State, obviously, if somebody else had won the Big Ten regular season this year, I wouldn't even be thinking about that. But Michigan State is the Big Ten champion. Don't try to take that away from them. They won they won it fair and square by what, 2 or 3 games? 3 games, I think they won it by Big Ten this year.
Yeah.
So
Michigan folded down the stretch, did not have a good end of the year. That's why if there's ever a team I could argue that needed to have a good tournament, it was Michigan, which is what is so interesting, because your point, does the Big Ten tournament really matter? You look at a team like Michigan, if nothing else, screw the seeding, they needed this tournament to prove again that they are a good team. I think they were really mentally, to me, coming down the stretch, were not in a good spot. They looked gassed. The offense looked not great. Wolf wasn't playing that well. Guards were turning it over a ton. Just did not have a good end of the season. So, as you and I probably both agree, and I think from a Michigan State perspective too, this is obviously a common thing people say of is this one of those tournaments where Izzo kind of says, hey, they've been hot coming into the tournament. I'm okay with the loss in the tournament. He'd never say that publicly. Give the guys a little reality check. You get out of there with no injuries. You head into the first round of the NCAA saying, hey, we lost to a good team. They only lost by 3, right? Kind of controversial play at the end of the game. Was it a foul? Was it not? For the record, I don't think it was a foul. But needless to say, you wonder if actually what happened for both teams was what both teams kind of needed, if you look at it in a very interesting way, right? Michigan needed this kind of coming together. Michigan State maybe needed that kind of punch in the gut a little bit to say, Izzo can make those guys go a little bit harder in practice, right? A little bit maybe less arrogant going into a game potentially, because that's the shit that gets you popped in the tournament. I bet that was his exact message to the team. So that was my kind of take on the Big Ten tourney overall. And I think Wisconsin played great too. I think they could be dangerous in the tournament if they end up getting hot too. So
yeah, look, I totally agree. I think if you would ask me yesterday, do you want Michigan State to lose this game? No, of course. I would have wanted them to beat Wisconsin, and of course, but just exactly what you said, I think it's only going to be a good thing for them to have that experience of taking an L. They're still won 9 out of their last 10 games, so they got some insane momentum still. You're not going to take the wind out of their sails by losing, a game that came down to a last-second shot against a good Wisconsin team who's a top 3. They got a 3 seed it's a great team. That's not going to slow them down too much, but did give them a little extra rest. Like you said, avoided any potential injuries today, so I'm okay with it. And for Michigan, look, they needed this Big Ten tournament that they had
for sure.
They played great, and they got a good squad. So I think they have a great chance to win some games in this tournament. They had lost their last 3 games of the regular season. They lost at home to Illinois by 20. Then they lost. That was
a bad one.
Yeah, they lost a second one in a row at home to Maryland, and then they got trounced, obviously, by Michigan State to end their season. So they really needed to pick me up here, and it was exactly what they needed to have happen. But I think Michigan fans are maybe a little bit, rightfully so, upset about the 5 seed that they got in the NCAA tournament, because they're really looking at these last 3 games that they just won in the Big Ten tournament. And they're forgetting the 3 games before that in the regular season that they lost. So what did you think? Did you think a 5 seed was good for Michigan?
I mean, so texting with all my buddies that I normally do, especially Billy. I'm always curious on his thoughts on this. And my buddy Dwight, who's a huge Michigan fan. Billy's brother Danny's a big Michigan fan as well.
Are they pissed?
So I think they definitely thought coming out that I think that they were sitting on the 4 line is probably where they thought. So I think if you were to look at it overall, probably a little bit upset that they fell on the 5. I think it's also just I think the fact that Wisconsin came in at a 3 seed, I know, Wilson, you and I were talking about this too. It's all right, we just beat that team in the finals. They end up getting a better seed. But to your point, again, you look at the quad 1 and 2 wins, like you were kind of telling me about I think that was kind of the takeaway. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we knew Michigan State was going to be sitting on the two line, right? I mean, Florida just played crazy to end the year. There was no way Michigan State was going to sniff that number 1 seed, even if they would have won the Big Ten tournament. I still don't think they're sitting on that 1 line because Florida played so well. So they were probably destined for a 2, regardless of what happened. Michigan had a little bit of flex, right? Depending on where things felt. I felt like they were in the 4 or 5, somewhere in there. I didn't really think they could get to the 3 just because of just the wins that they didn't have this year, right? They were obviously had played a ton of close games, but the way that they finished down the stretch. So I think, could they have been a 4? Yeah, that's probably maybe what people were thinking. They end up falling to the 5, but in the grand scheme,
doesn't really matter.
Is it that big of a difference? Like, you got to play who you got to play. But I think it was maybe when you look at some other things in the tournament, like you and I were talking about, and we can start there. I want to make sure we talk mostly about Michigan State, of course, but you look at just the tournament overall and any like overreactions that people had, right? I think it was, maybe Wisconsin getting that 3 seed, which we can talk a little bit about. It was North Carolina getting in the play-in game. They were questionable, right? 1-12 and quad 1 wins, which I think was kind of crazy. I thought Louisville sitting on that 8 line. I thought they were maybe going to be a 6-7 just based on the season. I know they lost to Duke in the conference championship game.
But they could have been a
Cooper
5.
Flag.
They could have been a 5. Yeah.
Right. So that was my take. How about you?
Yeah, no, I love it. When it comes to the 4 or 5 situation for Michigan, I think here's the reality: the Big Ten tournament, it just happens too late for them to take those games into real consideration for the seeding. Like, they won that game, and they had already made the graphics for the the Selection Sunday reveal before that game was over. That was already decided.
It's the dumbest thing ever, isn't it, by the way, that we got to wait this whole fucking time? Just release the thing. Like, can we just...
Exactly.
Whatever. That's a whole nother topic. But
so you can't even take that win into account, which kind of sucks for Michigan, to be honest. Like, maybe if they had the time to deliberate after that and they see, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense to give Wisconsin the 3 and Michigan the 5. Who knows what could have changed.
Yeah.
But Michigan was flirting with a 6 potential when they lost their last 3 games of the regular season. So I think a 5 is fine for them.
It was probably right. The tournament ended up right signing them if they were kind of teetering between a 4, between a 6, right? They kind of landed right in the middle of that title, which shows probably, to your point, where they would have been ranked had they not won the conference championship. Yeah. Maybe they would be staring down a 6 seed at that point.
Like if they hadn't beaten Maryland, because that game had enough time to take into account. If they hadn't beaten Maryland yesterday, they might have fell to a 6.
And I also think Michigan's just one of those teams going into this tournament that and again, this probably go for any team, when they're hot or when they're cold. Like, Michigan is that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde team here. Like they can be, when they are rolling and when they are at their best. Like, some of the guard play at the end of the game today, like the way that they were shooting. I know Wolf did not really do a ton at the end of the game, right? It was mostly on the guard play that looked really strong. Like, you get that going, like, that's where this team can be deadly. I ultimately think their lack of ability to rebound could be something that gets them killed in this tournament, because even though they got Golden and Wolf, they don't play super well down low in the post, which I think is a killer in the NCAA tournament. But that's one of those teams that is that perfect 4 to 6 seed where you're like, okay, if they really get hot, this team can really beat anybody, which I do believe that in Michigan. Like, I think that they can do that. But what's team's going to show up? As of recent, the team that was showing up was the 6 seed, right? The team that can't get it done, just looked like they were falling apart. Turning the ball over a ton, right? It seemed Wolf just looked out of gas to me these last couple games too. Before the tournament, just looked like he had nothing left. So that's March Madness. There's 30 teams that could say the same thing. Oh, they're hot, they're great. Oh, they get cold, they're not going to be good. I just think Michigan is the epitome of that for me in this tournament right now, because I could see them losing this first round. I could see them winning 2 games. So yeah.
Yeah. No, while we're on Michigan, I'll just give my thoughts on their tournament hopes.
Why don't we start there maybe with them?
Yeah.
Why don't we just start with Michigan, because we're already talking about them. So they're like we said, they will play on Thursday in Denver. They got a 10 p.m. tip. Michigan State also has a 10 p.m. tip in Cleveland, which is funny. They're both tipping at 10.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. That sucks.
Yeah, so Michigan's got to go. I think that was also, Wilson, part of the what do I think the reaction from my small pool of friends here was, not only did Michigan kind of where they fell on the line, but they got to fly to Denver and play on Thursday.
Wait a minute, they're playing in Denver. Oh, yes, man, and it's
on Thursday night at 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
so that
does suck for them.
It's a tough pull for them.
Here's what I'll say: Michigan, like you said, Michigan has the ability to make a run. They've got some great players. Golden and Wolf are a really nice duo to have down low. Wolf has got some really incredible ball handling skills for a guy of his size. You see him taking step back threes. He can take it to the rack. He's a great player. Golden is like 7'1". Like, he's going to be hard to stop. I don't care if he's not like a huge post presence normally. If you put a guy on him who's 6'8", he's going to have a hard time stopping him. He's 5-inch height difference. Like, Golden should be able to just take him in the post. And just looking at the lineup for UC San Diego, they just don't have the height. They got one guy on their roster who's 6'10", who doesn't really play. And then all of their guys who actually contribute, the tallest one is 6'8". Like, how are you going to guard Wolf and Golden? So, like, as much as Michigan fans might be upset from the seeding and the matchup, I think that they actually have a pretty favorable matchup when you look at the size that Michigan should be able to take advantage of. And then, what, are you upset about having to play Yale or Texas A&M in the second round? Like, come on. Texas A&M is a pretty poor 4 seed, in my opinion. I think they got that based off of previous teams, because when you look at their resume, they don't have a ton of great wins and they don't have a ton of standout guys. So I think Yale might be an upset there. So I think you're going to have a Wolf versus Yale matchup in the second round with his former team there, which is clearly what the committee is teeing up, because as much as it is a real sport, it's also an entertainment show. So if you can get Danny Wolf against his former team, that's just extra bonus points, which I think is going to happen. So I think Michigan wins those first 2 games. I think they beat UC San Diego and they beat Yale, and then they run into Auburn and they drop it to them. But I think that's a pretty good, like, getting to the Sweet 16 and facing the number 1 overall seed. Maybe they can keep it close, and that would be a great outcome for Michigan, in my opinion. Michigan fans might think otherwise, but to me, that's a good season for you. You win the Big Ten tournament, get to the Sweet 16, coming off the year with a first-year head coach. That's a successful season, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think breaking down the Michigan matchup again, because I do have some I got some data, Wilson. You know I love the data. So we're going naked eye off of data. Okay, so we got UC San Diego, the Tritons, by the way. So it's their first year eligible for the NCAA tournament, which is sweet. So they're great success in Division II. Ultimately moved up in the Division I. They won the Big West Conference tournament as well. So yeah, I mean they're really led by Tate Jones and McGee are kind of their 2 main guards. They average 20 and 17 a game, so a lot of heavy on the guard play. To your point. They ultimately finished number 36 in KenPom, which I thought was kind of interesting. Michigan was number 25, so only 11-point difference there in terms of the KenPom ratings. UC San Diego ranks 57th on offense and 30th on defense, where Michigan is 47th on offense, so about a 10-point differential there. And Michigan ranks 14th on defense, where UC San Diego ranks 30th. There's kind of 2 big things that stood out to me, Wilson, just as we look at these teams, and this is obviously just based on some stats for the year. UC San Diego is a tough defensive team that does not turn the ball over, just in general. So they average 9 turnovers per game, which is number 4 in the country. They're also number 2 in the country in steals per game. But the big one that I think is going to really hurt Michigan, Wilson, you talk about the size. I hear you on Golden. But their opponents' offensive rebounds a game for UC San Diego, they actually rank number 30th in the country, where Michigan ranks 140th. So UC San Diego, they do a good job on the offensive side of getting boards. We saw Michigan really struggle with that today against Wisconsin. I think they didn't have 1 offensive rebound, if I remember right, 1 or 2 in the second half. In Michigan's, 350th in the country of turnovers. So you're going up against a team, I know, yes, definitely maybe, lesser overall quality in terms of players depth-wise, but a team that takes care of the ball. They force a lot of turnovers going up against a turnover-heavy team that historically has struggled with rebounding, which is where I think that will give Michigan the most trouble. Do I think they're going to lose this game? No, I still think Michigan, if they play like the way that they did in this tournament, I think that they should win that game. But just more giving UC San Diego a little bit more credit when you look at just, again, their overall resume, up-and-coming team. I don't think they've lost since like early November, so they've been on a hot streak. But again, this is brand name versus not brand name here, which is why I think it's easy to say like, hey, Michigan's got bigger players, like they're just going to run away with this thing here. This is going to be a stingy team that they're going up against in San Diego. Their first time in the tourney, pesky on defense and really protect the ball. So that's just some stats to kind of break it down of why I think it'll be closer maybe than what people think, or just if you're looking naked eye at this. But again, who did UC San Diego play?
That's what I was just going to say. So, let me go there right now. You gave those numbers, which I love.
That's fine.
You pulled out the numbers of offensive rebounds and such. They're doing that against. Let me list some of the teams they played: Sacramento State, LaSalle, Laverne, Cal State Bakersfield, Idaho, Occidental, Cal State Fullerton, Cal Poly, UC
That's
Riverside,
fair. Fair. You don't have to read them all. I'm
just saying, like, there's not a name on that list of a team that's going to sniff the tournament. So they're doing that against teams that are not even close to Michigan's level.
Yeah.
What I will give to Michigan, and it's why they could have had a case for a 4 seed, is that they did have 11 quad one wins. So here I am talking up Michigan, but I try to, even though I am very biased towards Michigan State, I like to try to see the full picture. Michigan did have 11 quad one wins, which is one of the most in the country. Yeah. So they beat really good competition, and UC San Diego played really bad competition. I just think it's going to be too much for them. So
yeah, no, that's totally. Yeah, and again, I mean, the fact that they rank 36 in the KenPom, that does mean something though. So like, because when we jump to Michigan State, obviously they're a 2 seed, so I get it that they're going to be playing Bryant, that is not really ranked anywhere close in the KenPom, but we all know that we hold the KenPom, I think, close to our chest, right? It tends to be the universal rankings for the tournament. So again, do I think Michigan is primed for a deep run in this tournament? I don't, just because I think the warts are going to show. And I think the turnovers and the inability to rebound will catch up to them in this tournament, because that is the number 1 and 2 things that matters. Can you take care of the ball, and can you create multiple chances on the offensive zone, right? Like, that is what matters. Those are the 2 things that I think, again, take UC San Diego for whatever it is, whoever they played. They're good on rebounding on the offensive side of the ball, and they don't turn the ball over, and they force a lot of turnovers. So those are just like disaster things for me when I look at the NCAA tournament that I try to stay away from. I think Michigan could squeak by with the win, but like, you look at that Texas A&M team that they got coming up after that, like, let's say that they were to win, like, just looking again at some of these ratings, like, they're the number 1 team in the country in rebounding. Like, that matters.
Oh, wow.
Like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's just, again, people might be looking for like a bold take. Do you think they're going to win? Do you think they're going to lose? I just think this game's going to be closer than what people may think. But again, that's why Michigan State's a 2 seed and Michigan is a 5 seed, right? So like, you're going to be playing a closer seeded team. So that's why my maybe confidence is going to be a little bit greater in Michigan State, because you can take KenPom, you can take quad 1 wins, you can take all those things, throw them out the door when the tournament starts, because it doesn't mean shit. What matters is you're going head to head, and that's where you hope that the better team prevails here, which I still think is Michigan, but they're not on their A game. UC San Diego is no one to fuck with.
And this is why I love what you just said about the like, it all goes out the door when the tournament starts.
For sure.
I love the quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4, whatever. I love that system, to be able to do the seeding, to be able to make as best as possible, to try to get it as fair as possible for the seeding. But then it doesn't matter when you get there. Oh, this team had 13 quad 1 wins versus this team only had 7. Like, when you get into the game, sure, you can lean on some of that experience, but if the shots aren't dropping, they're not dropping. And we've seen what can happen, and it can change in a second, where a great team, like, I think about when Duke was a 2 seed a few years ago and lost. Happened to Michigan State against what the heck, Middle Tennessee State. Like, it happens to everybody eventually. If you're in the tournament, year in, year out, you're going to lose a game that you just should have never lost. and then it shakes up that whole region, and everything has changed. So you can look at your draw right now and love it or hate it, but it's all going to change when the tournament starts. But
for sure. And that's why all we can go off now is if you look at, again, stats, right? If I played nobody and I'm the number one rebounding team, I totally get it. But to me, you got 350, Division I teams or whatever, a team that ranks 7 in a category still means you're probably good. Okay, your competition sucked. Maybe you should be 50th. It's like, okay, that's still tough to go against. You know what I mean?
It holds something, yeah.
Because you could probably make the argument on the other side when we talk about Michigan State, how well they rank in those areas. Now, they've played a lot tougher teams, which then would lead you to say those stats are even more important because they've gone up against the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it can kind of go both ways. But either way, listen, I think Michigan's going to squeak by. I think it's going to be a close game. I ultimately think, though, if you just look at their overall way that they've played lately, I just don't have a lot of confidence in them to have a deep run, which is why I think there may be a one and done type win, but we'll see.
Yeah, I like it.
Plus, going to Denver, playing late at night, that does not help off of short rest. Call it what it is. These kids are 20 years old, so it's fine. They'll be okay. They're not 35 like you and me, but
they're not going to tear their meniscus just going up for a layup like me.
Correct.
But one thing I will say that gives me a little bit of pause with Michigan right now is like pride always comes before the fall. They celebrated today like they won the national championship when they won that Big Ten tournament. They posted all over their accounts, we are the best. Literally, they put best in the Big Ten on their Twitter account. Like, you guys, you just won 3 games. You won 3 games, and you're the best in the Big Ten after not winning the Big Ten. I'm like, they might be too much on their high horse, and that would be if anything gets in their way, it's going to be that. It's going to be themselves.
Yeah, which my counter to you, again, non-biased here, is that if it was Michigan State, they were winning, they'd be posting the same damn things. So,
absolutely
which I get
not.
It because they won the regular season. I totally hear
disagree.
You.
But I totally disagree. I do not believe that Michigan State would be posting we are the best in the Big Ten just because they won the Big Ten tournament if they did not win the Big Ten regular season. I've never seen them do that. I follow all their accounts. Michigan just has that air about them where they would just do that. That is not something Michigan State does. I would challenge you to find a post if you were to go back on their accounts that had that sort of vibe on a season where they were not the best.
My counter to that is I don't have the time to fucking do that. And listen, if you're asking me, do I think there's some arrogance in Michigan fans? Yes. What's the famous line? How do you know somebody went to Michigan? Because they will tell you. I'm very well aware of that. And we have Mr. Wolverine fan himself on here, Steve, that literally acts like the entire world is against Michigan, right? And gives you just that slight little, we're a little bit better than you. We're going to talk down to you a little bit, which both of your programs talk down to my Red Hawks, so I shouldn't be one to complain about it. Wilson, I'm just saying, you look at it, Michigan State fan, it's coming into play here as it should. At the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. If Michigan State goes out and loses in the first round of the tournament and Michigan wins,
then it doesn't
guess
matter.
What? Okay, like you're going to get it shoved in your face that happened.
Then
like,
whoever's the best in the Big Ten didn't matter. Yeah. Last thing I'll say about Michigan before we talk about Michigan State, just because I feel like we need to address it in the Michigan State game that happened, where Michigan State won by like what?
The tragedy that happened? The tragedy at midcourt? Oh,
yeah.
It's rough.
Here's my take on this. I am totally fine with, and actually kind of love, Michigan players standing at half court trying to disrupt that, ceremonious kissing of the logo for the senior send-off. I kind of love it. It's a rivalry thing. Like, do it, get it, try to get in their heads. Like, there's no love lost between rivals. It's like, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of disrespect towards them. I don't have any problem with that. And I also love Trey Holloman going up to them and being like, guys, get the hell out of here. We're doing our thing right now. Like, I love it both ways. I think it's a good rivalry thing. It didn't have to erupt into a brawl, which it didn't. It was just some scuttling, some pushing. That's fine. What I don't like is the Michigan people afterwards being like, oh, but they were just standing there. Like, where are they supposed to be? They didn't know. They weren't doing it intentionally. No, F that. They obviously knew exactly what they were doing. Just own it. Just say, yeah, we're standing on your logo and we're disrupting your senior send-off. Don't try to say, no, they had no ill intent. They're just standing there. Don't be a wuss. Like,
God, I love your impersonation of Steve. I love you. That's a great impersonation of Steve.
That was Steve's take, right? He was like, oh, where are they supposed to be? Just two guys standing at half court. Come on, get out of here.
Steve is not here, but his official take on the Michigan end of the Michigan State game was the game's still going on. They're still trying to win the game. They were down by like 13 with like 10 seconds left. And they substitute out players. I think your favorite player, Fat, was in the game, Wilson, by the way. I don't know
was he really? Oh, hell
he was one of the players. My biggest qualm of the entire thing, because I saw a lot of back and forth on this, again, through some buddies going back and forth on it, was just own it. I think after the game, coming out saying, we didn't know that was a tradition. And then Steve was bitching today saying, what is it, the responsibility of the coach to know every team's. Can you imagine if you were watching a Michigan game, football game, and someone from the other team ran and ripped down or was standing right in front of that Go Blue, whatever support thing that they always run under?
Right.
You just know that's what it is. And everyone knows, right? Everyone knows that that's what obvious. Michigan State does, right? And when Dusty May, I believe, had coached at Indiana, which means he was in the Big Ten. So yes, it probably got brought up at some point. I just don't like that. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Okay,
I don't
so
even
you
care.
Feel the same.
Just own, right. I actually love that it happened. I think it was awesome. I don't care. It's like planting a flag in a football game like Michigan did to Ohio State or whatever, right? When they plant, like, I get it. That is fine. That's rivalry. That's what we should have.
Like, yeah, is it disrespectful?
Own it.
Yeah, it's disrespectful.
Just own
I love it. It's disrespectful and just do it. It's your rival. Yeah.
Right. Just own it. Just own it. Like,
and don't be a puss afterwards. Yeah.
Right. Because that's kind of what it felt like of like, oh, I didn't even know that it existed. That's what you say. Listen, heat of the game. I get what happened. They're trying to do some shit. Guys, we're still trying to win the game. So I'm going to let my players stand where my players are going to stand. Great. That's all that needed to be said. And you look at it from the Michigan State side, love it that there was a little bit of fire there of like, get the hell off my logo, right? Like, that's
Absolutely.
Great. That's what it's just who pushed who and what are we back in the tunnel again at Michigan? I don't want to deal with that shit. I don't care. Like, I like that. I like a little bit of fire. That's what makes the rivalry great. So
absolutely,
Steve, if you're listening to this, which I know you are, sorry, dude. Could not disagree with you more on just like the game was still going on and we had a chance to win. That's the weakest fucking argument I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, first of all, it was a 20-point game. And secondly, Michigan players hadn't stood at half court the entire game. So it's not like that was just where they normally stand. So,
but I love it. That's great. I'm glad they did it. It was awesome. Made for great theater. So
it should be. That's what it should be. So I'll just say that and I'll leave that there. Do we want to talk a little bit about MSU's outlook here in the tournament and the matchups that they have in the first weekend?
Going up against Bryant, so they'll be 10 p.m. in Cleveland, so that should be good for them getting a game in Cleveland, right? At least 2 games, which is going to be, it's going to be filled with Michigan State fans. But yeah, they're going up against Bryant, 23-11 from the American East. They ultimately won the tournament. Interesting here, Phil Martelli Jr. is the coach. So everyone knows Phil Martelli, right? Coached at St. John's forever and then spent 5 years at Michigan. So again, just little extra tie in there with the Michigan State ties. Kind of an interesting story. So it's their second tournament appearance in the last 4 years. They started 6-9 and then actually went 17-2 to end the year. So they actually had a really nice run from the end of the year.
Nice.
In terms of where they sit overall, though, like Ken Palm, they were obviously like way outside even the top 50. Any of their non-con games, anyone that was even ranked in the Ken Palm, in the top 50, they got absolutely killed. St. Bonaventure, St. John's, and Grand Canyon, they got blown out in those games, which is the only games that they really had of any relevance. So been a hot team, but probably the right matchup for a number 2 Michigan State team. But yeah, that's Brian and Phil Martelli Jr. trying to follow in his dad's footsteps. But Wilson, your initial thoughts on the Michigan State Bryant matchup?
On that matchup in particular, I mean, I haven't seen anything on Bryant. I haven't even looked up what like you just went through. I didn't know any of that. So, but even knowing that they've just went 17-2, I would predict that Michigan State wins by 25 plus. I saw the line opened up at 19.5. I think that Michigan State's going to cover that because I feel like we're we're ready to go. A team like Bryant's not going to get in our way. I think ever since we've really made Jace Richardson the guy and given him the keys, it's made our team so much better. It's made our team so much. It's actually made Jaden Akins better too. He was having a really, really bad year, and he's turned it around a little bit. And I think it's because he's felt a little less pressure with Jace handling some of the scoring. You got guys like Colin Carr stepping up. You talk about getting second chances on offense. I mean, that dude's a rebounding machine. He can jump out of the gym. He's been doing a great job on the offensive glass. So has Jackson Kohler. I just think that a team like Bryant is not going to be able to handle all of the different punches that Michigan State can throw. So I feel really good about that matchup. And then looking ahead to the next round, if we had Marquette or New Mexico, I'm actually going to predict New Mexico to beat Marquette. And yeah, I think I don't see any problems for us in this region, which, on paper at least, as we said, the game starts, anything can happen. But on paper, I don't see any problems for us until we get to Auburn, if we were to get there in the Elite Eight. And that's where it becomes dicey for them. But before that, I think we got a really good shake on this region. There's some decent teams. Ohio State's, they're fine. Louisville's obviously the best 8 seed. They should be a 5 or a 6 seed, but they're probably not going to get by Auburn. So there's nobody in this region that really scares me. So I actually feel really good about Michigan State's draw.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa State, Ken Palm, they're number 10, so they're only 2 behind Michigan State. So that could be an intriguing matchup there coming in, 3 games in, whatever, if you obviously end up getting to the Sweet 16 at that point. I mean, Bryant specifically too, just if you look at just who they are just from a team perspective, there's this Earl Timberlake guy he's an American East Player of the Year. He's averaging, only player in the nation he's averaging essentially 15 points, 8 boards, 5 assists and 2 blocks. So this dude does everything for their team, which is what you see from some of these lower seeds, right? I guess I should say higher seeds. I never know how to frame that the right way.
Worse
higher,
seeds.
Lower seed? Yeah, it'd be a lower seed, right?
They're a higher seed. Bryant is a higher seed. Yeah.
They're a higher seed.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So it's going to be Earl Timberlake, and then their second leading scorer, both guards, is this Rafael Pinzon guy. He's been averaging 20 points a game. That is their 2 guys. That is who is going to fuel their team. So I expect to see Michigan State doing a ton of heavy work on those 2 guys, which is what you see in these higher seed matchups, right? You got 1 to 2 to 3 player of the year coming out of these smaller conferences. You just try to bottle those guys up, right? You're switching on everything. You're doubling them if you have to. You want somebody else to try and beat you from these teams. This is a great example where they have 2 guys that ultimately can do that. I went through a ton of the Michigan stats, right? Or the UC San Diego stats of just rebounding and things like that. I mean, Bryant is nowhere near anywhere in the top 200 on damn near any of their stats this year, even coming out of a bad conference, which, again, take it for what you will, probably shows that, Michigan State should handle their business. My biggest X factor for Michigan State, just like I said with Michigan, is the turnovers and the ability to rebound is, Jace Richardson's been playing great, which I think has been absolutely huge for them. It is, 1, make sure he stays out of foul trouble, right? You saw a little bit of that in the Wisconsin game, right, where he kind of ran into some foul trouble, had to sit early. He's become such a key focal point in their offense with under 2-3 minutes to go, and those crunch times, he's becoming the go-to guy. I think that's probably the biggest kryptonite for Michigan State is they can go through these droughts, right, where they just have a tough time scoring, which happens for every team. But I think when you don't have a guy or the guy, right? Think a Cassius Winston, right? A Cooper Flagg, whatever you want to, just a go-to guy. Even some of these lower teams have this, 20-point a game guy. Michigan State is just, they kill you by the sum of the parts, right? That's what they do, which just Jace Richardson to me is, I think, going to ultimately fuel as far as Michigan State goes. Because if he keeps playing the way that he's been playing, he now gives them that guy with 2, 3, 4 minutes to go that you're trying to create shots for, or at least the defense is, erring to his side to create some extra protection there, which should open up, guys like Akins, right? Like driving to the rack, right? It's going to give a guy like Kohler, who's been playing so great in the post, maybe some more one-on-one instead of getting doubled. So that's just my biggest concern for Michigan State is can can they work through that with their big rotation and all that of just those moments when they're really struggling to score? Who's going to be the guy to take over? Do you agree with that, Wilson, or what's your take on that?
I totally agree. I think Michigan State hasn't had a guy who could do that since, Cassius, since
Cassius.
Miles Bridges would probably be even a better example of that, a guy that can just really absolutely take over and score in every way. But Jace Richardson, I think, is a guy who can do that. He can create his own shot. Not to that level yet. You can't call him, like what Cassius was his senior year, or even Miles Bridges. Obviously, Miles Bridges is a great NBA player now. So I'm not saying Jace Richardson is like on that level by any means, but he has that flash and that ability to create a shot. He's a great 3-point shooter. I think he was like 4 of 5 in the game yesterday against Wisconsin from 3. He's shooting like a little over 40%, I think, from the year from 3, which is fantastic.
Yeah, he's played great. Played great.
He's what we're going to need to make a deep run. But then you got a lot of guys who I think can add even more than they have already. Jaden Akins, like I said, had a tough stretch for the year, and I think he can really come on and take a step up. Jackson Kohler at the start of the year was dominant, and he's still been good, but I think he could step back into a bigger role of like creating shots and just like dominant rebound performances. He's had a couple. But even like Frankie Fidler, I think, has been underutilized since the start of the year after he moved to the bench from the starting lineup. He's a guy who can, and he's done it. He was a 20-point per game scorer at Omaha. Like, dude knows how to score. So they got the weapons to make a run. And yeah, even like you mentioned, Iowa State being just a couple points behind them in KenPom.
Yeah,
dude, I'm looking right now, and they had a couple decent games, decent wins for sure. But then, like, I look at the games where they got blown out by Kansas State, blown out by Kansas, blown out by Arizona, lost to West Virginia. Like, I just feel like with the weapons that Michigan State has, that until you get to Auburn in this region, there's nobody that really stands out. Like, sure, we could have a bad game and just do what Michigan State does sometimes.
Of course.
And
anybody
hit
can
a shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. I feel pretty solid about our chances. Like, the biggest worry for me, you mentioned turnovers and rebounding. My biggest worry is that they just go out and shoot 15% from 3, which we've done a few times this year. If they do that, then we could lose to anybody. Like, Bryant could beat us. But I feel like that hasn't happened as much since Jace Richardson has been, given more control. Our offense has just flowed better. And I think Izzo's going to have these guys ready to go, taking good shots only. So yeah, I'm feeling really good, man.
Yeah. I think this is probably one of those classic Izzo teams of, they're not going to beat themselves, where you've seen that maybe in the past, which I think is, again, you look at what wins in the tournament. It is that, right? It is protecting the ball, right?
Yeah.
Making sure that you're not turning it over, like you're maximizing every offensive possession that you have and making sure you're getting good rebounds to not create second chances, especially when you're playing these worse seeded teams, right? And that's where I think Michigan State has that type of team this year. The games where they have not played well, that's what I think is so interesting about this team is they kind of buck the trend, right? They're not a great 3-point shooting team, right? Pretty much every team in basketball is all about the 3, right? Michigan State, they like to get out, they like to run, they like to create turnovers, get steals, and then get the guys on the run. That's when that chaos starts, where Michigan State thrives. Like, you see a guy like Trey Holloman, right? Didn't have a great game yesterday, but him in the open floor, a couple of these times we've seen with his speed. And you look at a guy like Jeremy Fears and Akins, right? Or Akins, excuse me. Like, you get those 3 going, like that's what gets this team moving. It's to your point. Can you survive a game where you shoot like you have sometime this year where, let's say, Jace is off? You don't really have any other pure shooters on the team. That's, again, not saying they can't push through that. It's just more something to watch as we go in the tournament. If Jace really keeps shooting the way he has been, he just gives them an entirely new dynamic on that team of someone that can be deadly from the outside. Just because I think defenses have to help a little bit more. That creates some mismatches, maybe again on the other side of the floor. So just him even being able to shoot, I don't know, make 2-3 3-pointers a game. Like that's okay. I'll take that. He's going to go 4 for 5, 3 from 5. Like that's like Michigan State needs that because aside from him, I don't have a ton of confidence in the outside shooting from the rest of the team. Wilson, you mentioned a guy like Frankie Fiddler. I think it was maybe the first game of the Big Ten tournament. He was making those like 10 to 12 foot jumpers, right? Like right by the free throw line. Like that's where his money time becomes, right? Especially some teams have run zone at Michigan State this year too, I think to try to throw them off. A guy like Frankie Fiddler is going to sit in the middle of that defense, and that is where he is going to cook, right? Like that's what he needs to be able to do. So.
Absolutely. Especially when you get into like the second game of a round where it's like the team didn't have a ton of time to prepare. A guy like Frankie Fiddler, when you have a weapon like that they're not game planning for, you got to make use of that. That's where I think like some of these teams can win a game or two. You know, like they've got a great player or a couple really good guys. They could do something really well. But if you don't have a real cast of characters or just like a superstar, sure, you could have a Kemba Walker come in and take your team all the way there by himself. But most of the time, what we see with teams that make deep runs, they have a great player, but they also have a great cast of characters around them because you're going to end up in one of those games where you're just having a bad shooting night. Like Jace might have a bad shooting night. And then you can just say, let's run on him, which I think Michigan State's going to do anyways. But let's just run the court and have Cohen Carr just dunking lobs.
God, he's been good. He's been so good. It's so funny. I really only see him like in games. It's just funny. He's just like just doing dunks all over the place. But it makes you talk all about the matchups, right? Like you force defenses to kind of sink in when he's on the floor because they're looking for the alley-ooper, right? Like there's just going to be a lob to him, which hopefully creates more space for the guards. That's where the 10 to 12 foot jumper comes in even more because those bigs might be sinking. They're not going to help as much. And that's where Michigan State has seen that success. You want to sneak out a little bit? Great. We're going to throw it over top of you and he's going to jam all over you. You know?
Yeah. And Carson Cooper's been getting a lot of lobs too. Like they got lob threats. They got 3-point threats with Jace. And also I will say Trey Holloman's a good 3-point shooter. Jackson Kohler, you can't even leave him, dude. He just hit that one yesterday where they left him wide open and brought him right back. Michigan State almost came back and won that because of that shot. So I don't know. They got a lot of weapons, and I'm gonna predict it right now on this pod. I'm gonna predict an MSU Final Four.
Wow,
I'm predicting.
Your confidence is, if I'm a Michigan fan listening to this, Wilson, one, it's just oozing your hatred for Michigan and your love for Michigan State. That came out as
Wait a minute. I actually gave Michigan a lot of props in this pod.
I agree.
I said that.
I'm not doubting that.
I was very positive on their outlook because I do think that they have a good team and that they are going to win a couple games in this tournament. And I also gave them their props for being Big Ten tournament champions. I just want to make sure we're clear on what they actually won and that it was not the Big Ten and that it was the Big Ten tournament. So that's all. That's all.
Fair.
That's my.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not hatred. And then I was also saying I don't care at all that they stood on our logo and like I love it actually. So no hatred towards Michigan here. Just like let's be honest about what was actually won. And then most seasons coming into the NCAA tournament for Michigan State outlook, I'm usually pessimistic, man. I see the bracket and I'm like, oh, we got screwed with our region. Like we got the hardest region. Like that's how I normally feel. And I think what it actually stems from is in those seasons, like a lack of confidence in our team's real ability. Because I see a matchup against somebody who's like just a pretty solid team. And I'm like, oh no. But this year I don't feel that way. I feel way more confident in the squad. So it's kind of just like I want those tough matchups because I think we can win them. So it's just a confidence in the team's ability from what I've seen from them this year is what's made me feel good.
They got a gritty team. Like I think that's what's, as like a non-Michigan State alum, right? Or a non-Michigan alum. Like I always like you look at what works well in the tourney and you said it yourself, right? It's having a guy. Like the guy, right? Like it's generally what helps these teams win is in those like key moments. And that's where I think Michigan State to me they don't have necessarily like the name brand person like I'm used to seeing with them. And maybe it's just the post Cassius. Like I feel like he was the last big one that they had of that name. And I look at this team and it's like Jace Richardson's turning into that. And they have a really, really fucking good team. Like you do not have the record that they had with the amount of wins that they had in quad 1 and quad 2 wins. Like you don't have that. They're ranked third. They went 13-5 in quad 1 and 5-1 in quad 2. I mean, 18 quad 1 and 2 wins with only 6 losses. Like historically, right, it was Michigan State. They schedule hard to start the year. They get blown out by UNC or Duke to start the year, right? Izzo says, we're trying to make the team tough. Like this just was not that team this year. They just from the gun, they've been good this year. And I think, again, it's bucking the trend of what you see in college basketball, which I think is what makes this so unique. They are not a great 3-point shooting team. It's not a strength of who they are. And that is just, it's different, which is why I love it so much. So I think that's why I see greater confidence in Michigan State, and because they lost in the conference tournament. To me, I think that is an Izzo just patented move. We're going to lose, get you pissed off, and then we're going to go into the tournament feeling right. I do think that Iowa State matchup could be tougher than what you think, Wilson. Like, you look at their quad 1 win. They had 16 quad 1 wins and 9 losses.
Wait. No.
Sorry, 16. They were 16-9 quad 1 and quad 2.
There you go. I was going to say, I think the only team who had 16 quad 1 wins was Auburn.
Was Auburn. Yep.
Because Michigan State was third with 13, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So I'm just saying, but we could go back and forth in this. I think they can beat Iowa State, Ole Miss. Doesn't matter. It's a tournament. Like, who gives a fuck? Play who you got to play the next round. The fact that they got placed in the same region as Auburn, obviously, like, Auburn's pretty fucking good. Can they keep the momentum going, though? They've lost 3 out of the last 4, right? Like, that does matter coming into the tournament, right? Like,
they're
that is a
beatable.
factor.
They're very beatable. A little
bit of a cold streak. You're going to – right. Like, but they are the number 1 seed for a reason, right? They had a hell of a year. Does that mean maybe they get a little bit cold in the tournament? Who knows? This just has one of those Izzo feels this year. I don't want to jinx it, but it has a feel of one of those teams that just really seems to be glued together and well gelled. And I think it's been a hell of a job by Michigan State and Izzo this year. I think it was a true bounce back. You look at a guy like Xavier Booker, who's pretty much contributing nothing
Zero.
At all on this team. And he was supposed to be the guy, right? Like that's what he was proclaimed to be. And he's
5-star recruit, dude.
Right. And he's seeing 4 minutes a game. I didn't even see him in the second half yesterday against Wisconsin. He didn't even play. So
he's just got no confidence. He's got no attack.
He's rattled.
He's rattled. Yeah, I feel bad for him, sure. Honestly. I really do feel bad for the kid. But he's another guy though who if he could step up and hit a big 3 or 2, he's got the ability to do it. Like he's just another weapon that you never know what's going to come out in the tournament. And
I mean, if he goes off in the tournament, shit, man, that's like Foster Lawyer style.
I'm not talking about if he goes off. I'm just talking about if he's in there and he actually knocks down one of these open threes that he's been bricking, because he has the ability. He's done it a million times, but just not in the last 10, 12 games.
Yeah,
he's another we could only. I don't think that we can go down from where we've been because we've had like Jaden Akins having a tough stretch. Who's one of our most important players, Xavier Booker doing absolutely nothing, and Jace Richardson still learning how to be the guy. Like I think it only goes up from there.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, they got a young team. Don't forget, Jace is a freshman, so we'll see the big lights, the shine. We'll see if that gets to him. But I'm just fucking excited to watch basketball. So Wilson, I got to ask. So I know we've been chatting for a while here, but like tournament takeaways overall, like what's your who do you think is the best team in this tournament? All in right now.
Man, I would have said Auburn if they hadn't just lost 3 out of their last 4. But that's got them looking really, questionable. I still think it's Duke, which I've thought all year. As long as Cooper Flagg can get over the ankle and they say he's ready for the tournament.
Yeah.
But if Cooper Flagg's playing, he's the best player in college basketball. He's going to be a likely consensus number 1 pick in the NBA draft, and he's going to be an NBA All-Star. So if you got that guy on your team, I think you have the best chance to win. So I'll go Duke. After Duke, I would say Florida, and then probably Michigan State would be my picks.
Wow. Yeah, Florida's the one for me. I only say that because you say, but one of two ways: getting hot at the end of the year, getting cold at the end of the year. Florida has just been rolling right now, so I'm probably taking a little bit of bias of the tournament and all that. Right, the last couple games,
but it matters. That matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just think they're a well-oiled machine at this point now too. Like Florida's a big brand name. It's been a little bit of time since they've had this good of a team, right? Where they've been ranked this high in the tournament. I'm with you on Duke. I think Cooper Flagg's injury, we'll see what happens there. I mean, didn't end up affecting them anywhere on the seeding line. Not that I thought it would, but historically sometimes somebody's hurt. It could maybe drop someone from a 2 to a 3, or that was never going to happen for Duke after they beat Louisville anyways without Cooper Flagg, which probably just cemented their standing even more.
Yeah.
There are some interesting injuries though. Like you look at a team like Alabama, like Grant Nelson, who's been a great player for them, averaging 12 and 8 boards a game. Like he's going to see a knee specialist tomorrow. You got Juwan Roberts from Houston. He averages 11 and 8 boards a game. Like he might be out for the tournament too. Cooper Flagg, kind of questionable. Anything like that opens up just a massive opportunity for other teams. That's where you look at a team like Auburn. Yes, they've been cold over these last couple games, but if they find their footing again, they're healthy, like that's a team that's probably going to earn what their seed is. And I think we'll find out, early on in the tournament, they're going to play a 16 seed. So I don't foresee an upset happening there, but okay. They're playing that second round game going up against Louisville or Creighton. Like Louisville's going to be a good matchup, and you'll kind of figure out, okay, are they feeling good, or are they kind of still rebounding from, their end of season fail? So I'd probably say for me, it's probably Florida or Auburn is where I sit right now, of who I think just is the hottest team right now. I think Michigan State's right up there, though. I mean, like the top 3 to 5 of this tournament without a doubt, which again, they're a 2 seed, so nothing earth shattering there. But
yeah, I'm just going to say my Final Four right now is Michigan State, it's Florida, Tennessee, and Duke.
I like that. So you got
two
Michigan
seeds.
State.
Yeah, I got
Michigan State pulling the upset over the upset over Auburn, huh?
Like I said, they've lost 3 out of the last 4. They're looking beatable. There's only been one time ever that all the number 1 seeds made it to the Final Four, and it was, it's been 17 years. Somebody's going to be upset. A lot of teams are going to get upset. So if I'm going to call somebody to upset somebody, it's going to be my Spartan Dogs.
I like it. The confidence is high, Wilson. This is the most confident. No, I know. This is the most confident you've been about. I know obviously we've only been doing this pod for a year, but like this is the most confident you've been in anything that we've done been around this Michigan State team. Lions around Pistons, Red Wings, Tigers, whatever. It has been like you are marking your line in the sand here that you think this is the team for Michigan State to get them back to a Final Four, which I
haven't felt that way in a long time. 5 years probably since the tournament that didn't happen.
Which they definitely would have won.
I felt no confidence in them at this time of the year in the last 5 years. So I finally feel it, and I'm excited. I'm probably overly excited, probably overly optimistic. Yep. I don't believe in jinxes. I don't think I'm jinxing them. Like, I know you think we jinxed the Red Wings again this year.
No, we definitely did. Wilson, but like, if you look at the stats on that, like when we did our podcast last year, they lost 8 in a row.
I know.
When we did the podcast this year, Wilson, I believe they lost 7 in a row.
Yeah, I know. It was bad. But I don't believe that's why. So that's why I feel confident coming on here and putting it out there. I also am not somebody who's going to be like, oh, I'm scared to say this because then I'll look bad when they lose and it'll make it even worse. No. I feel resolute and steadfast in my takes.
Ooh, resolute, great word.
And so I'm not going to be shy to say I think we got this is the year we make a run.
Okay, so you got Michigan State going to the Final Four. You have what? Michigan losing, and after the Sweet 16, you got to get into the Sweet 16 and then losing?
I think that Auburn's going to take them out. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Which also, we never even talk about how stupid it is to have them in the same fucking region.
It is stupid. It is stupid.
And I know it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. Big Ten team. Okay, come on. Like, can we have a little bit of variety? Like, really?
I know.
Come on. They're in the same, like, they're an hour apart. Like, I feel like you got to do like a little bit better than that. Like, put them in the East region or something. Come on.
I would love if they beat Auburn and Michigan State matchup in the NCAA tournament.
Can you imagine?
I kind of would love it. It's
Which
very unlikely.
Would be awesome.
Yeah,
but that would be awesome to have that happen. Which maybe that's, again, we know they love the ratings. We've talked about this on like college football too. It's all about the ratings. Like the odds of that happening is slim, I think. But
yes, I think so.
Just as soon as I saw it, I'm kind of watching the bracket show and I'm getting excited. Like, all right, let's see. Okay, Michigan. Okay, cool. Let's see where Michigan State is. And it was like, fuck, really?
Yeah.
Like, Michigan, really? Same side? Okay. Oh, awesome. Sick. All right.
But the reason
cool.
I would like it is because I want to take a line from Steve, what he said about Ohio State for Michigan. Michigan is Michigan State's booty call for college basketball. Like,
wow.
Dude,
wow.
I mean, we beat them by a collective 30 points over 2 games. At Chrysler, at Breslin, doesn't matter. Just whooped on them. And like the matchup is just there for Michigan State.
It feels like I wish Steve was here because, man, it feels like you guys need a bet on something. Like who the hell is going to go farther in the tournament? God, I don't know, like a tattoo bet or something. We got to do a hoodie bet between you two or something. Like
I already owe you both a hoodie, and you guys haven't told me what to get you. So
I know. Maybe I'll get a Michigan State hoodie just because.
Oh, I would. I would love buying that.
I don't know.
I'll buy you
then
2
it feels
of them
like
if it's Michigan State.
I'm trying to be the non-biased pod member here. I'm trying to. Again, I cheer for the school I actually went to, unlike Steve. So that's fine, though.
I'd get you a Michigan State and a Michigan one.
Great. Okay. That's even those stupid house divided ones. I hate that shit when people wear that.
That's
Shut
the
up.
worst. That's
wear your school colors. Own it.
Absolutely.
Anyways, all right. Well, I don't know when we'll be back on, Wilson. Maybe we'll. We got the tournament this week. Again, I'm hopefully going to be dropping a pod with my my cousin at some point here too. That was on the Gators team. Maybe we'll get that out this week as just kind of a midweek drop. But maybe we'll try to jump on. Who knows? Maybe even this time next weekend. And kind of do a recap of how the tournament ended up for that first weekend.
Love it. It sounds great, man.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you all once again for listening to another hour and 6 minutes of Take the Points as we talk about college basketball. Super excited for this week. We will see you back here next week on Take the Points.
A true OG underdog podcast.